Sophia clutched the steering wheel as her old sedan sputtered to a halt on the muddy back road outside Austin, Texas. Rain had turned the dirt path into a slick trap, and her tires spun uselessly before sinking deeper. She slammed her palm against the dashboard, frustration boiling over. Her dress, once a crisp navy blue, was now splattered with grime from her futile attempt to push the car free. She had no choice now. The sprawling ranch ahead, its lights flickering through the downpour like a reluctant beacon, was her last hope for shelter tonight. She grabbed her soaked bag and trudged toward the gate, her heels sinking into the earth with every step. The ranch belonged to Alexander Hayes, or so the locals had told her when she'd asked directions earlier that day. She didn't know him personally, but his name carried weight in Austin, a self-made magnate who'd turned inherited land into a multi-million-dollar empire of sustainable agriculture and tech-integrated farming. He was, reclusive, they said, widowed young and buried in work ever since. Sophia's heart raced as she approached the massive wooden door of the main house, a blend of rustic stone and modern glass that screamed quiet wealth. She knocked, her knuckles raw from the cold, and waited in the pounding rain. The door swung open, revealing a tall man in his late 30s, his dark hair tousled as if he'd been running a hand through it. His jaw was set firm, eyes sharp under furrowed brows, dressed in a simple flannel shirt and jeans that did little to hide his broad shoulders. Alexander stared at her, surprise flickering across his face before his expression hardened. "Can I help you?" His voice was deep, edged with caution, like a man used to guarding his solitude. "I'm sorry to bother you," Sophia stammered, water dripping from her hair. "My car broke down about a mile back. I'm soaked, and there's no signal out here. Could I please use your phone or maybe just dry off inside for a bit? I promise I won't be any trouble." He hesitated, his gaze sweeping over her muddy form. Something in her eyes, the raw desperation beneath the politeness, seemed to soften him just enough. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. The warmth of the house enveloped her like a reluctant embrace, the scent of wood smoke and leather filling the air. He led her to a spacious living room where a fire crackled in a stone hearth. "I'll get you a towel and coffee if you want." As she dried off, perched on the edge of a plush couch that contrasted with the humble farm vibe she'd expected, Sophia stole glances at him. He moved with efficient grace, handing her a mug that warmed her trembling hands. She was 32, a graphic designer who'd clawed her way out of a fractured childhood in foster homes, building a small freelance business that barely kept her afloat. But now, everything was crumbling. Her grandmother's will had a cruel stipulation: to inherit the family home and the funds tied to it. She needed to be married within a year of the reading. Time was up tomorrow, and without that inheritance, she'd lose the only stability she'd ever known. Desperation had driven her here, to this stranger's door, after hearing whispers in town about his own isolated life. They talked haltingly at first. Alexander asked about her car, she explained the breakdown. But as the fire popped and the rain drummed on the windows, conversation deepened. She mentioned her work, how she poured her soul into designs that clients often overlooked. He nodded, his eyes lingering on her face. "Sounds like you fight for what you create. Not many do." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken recognition. Sophia's breath caught. This man, with his fortress of a home and his guarded demeanor, saw her in a way no one had. But she couldn't afford sentiment. As the clock ticked toward midnight, she set down her mug, her hands steady despite the storm inside. "Alexander, I need to ask you something." "Insane. I came here because I need a husband. Tonight. It's for an inheritance, a stupid clause in my grandmother's will. Marry me just on paper, and I'll make it worth your while. We can annul it later. Please." His jaw tightened, the firelight casting shadows on his face. He didn't laugh or dismiss her. Instead, he leaned back, crossing his arms. "You don't know me. Why would I agree to that?" "Because you're alone," she said softly, risking everything. "I can see it in this house. Beautiful, but empty. Maybe you need a fresh start too." Silence stretched, deafening in its weight. Alexander's eyes darkened, memories of his late wife flashing unbidden. The car accident 5 years ago that had shattered his world, leaving him to build walls higher than his ranch fences. He'd thrown himself into his business, controlling every variable to avoid more pain. But this woman, muddy and bold, cracked something in him. "One condition," he said finally, his voice rough. "We do this. Right. No half measures. And you stay here tonight. Separate rooms, of course." They drove into Austin proper in his truck, the rain easing as they found a 24-hour chapel downtown, neon lights buzzing in the night. The ceremony was quick, vows exchanged with a gravity that belied the pretense. When the officiant pronounced them married, Alexander's hand brushed hers, sending a spark up her arm. Back at the ranch, he showed her to a guest suite, its bed soft and inviting. "Good night, Sophia," he murmured, his eyes holding hers, a beat too long. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Alexander's minimalist office, overlooking the rolling hills of his property. Sophia sat across from him, papers spread on the desk. "The inheritance is secured now," she said, relief mingling with unease. "We can file for annulment in a few weeks." But Alexander shook his head. "Not yet. My board is pressuring me about stability. Image matters in this industry. Play the part a little. Longer. Public events. Act like a wife. In return, I'll fund your design studio expansion. Deal?" She hesitated, her pride warring with practicality. She'd always been independent, hiding vulnerabilities behind hard work. But his offer was a lifeline. Fine, but no strings beyond that. Their first public outing was a gala in downtown Austin, benefiting local agriculture. Sophia wore a borrowed gown, her arm linked with his as they entered the glittering ballroom. Whispers followed them. The reclusive billionaire with a mysterious new wife. Alexander's hand rested on the small of her back, warm through the fabric, sending unwelcome heat through her. "Smile," he whispered, his breath against her ear. "They need to believe it." She did, leaning into him, their chemistry crackling like electricity. A colleague approached, clapping Alexander on the shoulder. "You two look so in love. Congrats, man." As the night wore on, they danced under crystal chandeliers, his body close to hers. Sophia's heart pounded. This wasn't supposed to feel real. Back at the ranch, in the quiet of his penthouse-like master suite overlooking the city lights on clear nights, they shared a late-night drink on the balcony. "Tell me about her," Sophia said softly, sensing his shadows. Alexander's grip tightened on his glass. "My wife, Emily, died in a crash. I was driving, blamed myself ever since." His voice broke, a rare crack in his armor. She reached out, her hand covering his, and he didn't. Pull away. Days blurred into weeks. Sophia worked from a sunlit room he'd converted into her studio, her designs flourishing with his quiet support. He remembered small things, her favorite herbal tea, the way she sketched late at night, and left notes or supplies without fanfare. One evening, after a grueling day, she twisted her ankle on the ranch path. Alexander scooped her up without a word, carrying her inside. He bandaged it gently, his fingers lingering on her skin, the air thick with unspoken desire. "You're not what I expected," he admitted, his eyes softening. "Stronger, kinder." She swallowed, her breath catching. "This stopped being fake for me a while ago." He leaned in, their faces inches apart, but his phone buzzed. A board call. The moment shattered, leaving frustration in its wake. They escaped to Charleston for a business trip. the charming southern city a backdrop for their unraveling pretense. Sharing a hotel suite, they wandered cobblestone streets, her laughter drawing rare smiles from him. In a quiet garden under blooming magnolias, he pulled her close. "Sophia, But fear gripped him, memories of loss flooding back. He stepped away, the silence heavy. Back in Austin, tension built. At her modest apartment in the city, a stark contrast to his ranch, she packed her things, realizing she'd fallen hard. He showed up unannounced, rain-soaked like her that first night. "I can't do this halfway," he said, voice raw. Their first real kiss unfolded right there, in the quiet intimacy of her doorway, where the soft glow of the hallway light cast gentle shadows across their faces. He reached out tenderly, his strong hands cupping her face with a deliberate gentleness, drawing her closer as his lips met hers in a slow, deliberate motion that built with an undeniable intensity. A warm heat blossomed between them, spreading like wildfire through their bodies, igniting every nerve as her fingers instinctively fisted in the fabric of his shirt, pulling him nearer in a silent plea for more. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their breaths mingling in the air. "This changes everything," she whispered softly against his mouth, her voice a hushed tremor that carried the weight of unspoken promises and newfound depths. But beneath the surface, secrets continued to fester like hidden wounds, refusing to heal in the light of day. Sophia had held back the complete truth from him, a deliberate omission that gnawed at her conscience. Her substantial inheritance demanded not merely the formality of a wedding ceremony, but a full year of committed marriage before it could fully vest and become hers without contest. The revelation came abruptly when a formal letter from the lawyer arrived at the sprawling ranch, its crisp envelope slicing through the illusion like a sharp knife, exposing the deception in stark black ink. Alexander's face drained of color, turning ashen as the words sank in, his eyes widening in a mix of shock and betrayal. "You lied," he accused her sharply, his voice dropping to a chilling tone like ice cracking under pressure, each syllable laced with the hurt of shattered trust. "I was scared." She defended herself desperately, her voice cracking as hot tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision and spilling over her cheeks in silent streams. "What I feel for you is real now, more than I ever imagined it could be," she added, her words tumbling out in a plea for understanding, her heart pounding with the fear of losing him forever. "How can I trust that?" he retorted, his question hanging in the air like a suspended blade, sharp and unforgiving, ready to sever the fragile bond they had built. He turned away from her then, his broad shoulders rigid with unresolved pain, the silence between them thickening like a storm cloud. In the wake of that confrontation, they separated, the distance growing as days stretched into an endless agony that weighed heavily on both their souls. Alexander immersed himself deeply in the demanding work of the ranch, channeling his turmoil into the physical labor of tending to the land and animals, but the vast fields and barns now felt emptier than ever before, echoing with the absence of her laughter and presence. Sophia, meanwhile, threw herself wholeheartedly into her creative designs, pouring her emotions onto sketches and fabrics, eventually landing a major client through her own undeniable merit and talent. An achievement that should have brought elation, but instead tasted hollow and bittersweet without him to share in the triumph, leaving her nights filled with restless longing. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he appeared unexpectedly at her apartment door, stripped of any grandeur or pretense, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a raw vulnerability that made his eyes shine with unspoken fears. "I lost Emily because I couldn't let go of my need for control, clinging to it like a lifeline that ultimately drowned us," he confessed, his voice steady but laced with regret. "But with you, you make me want to risk it all, to step into the unknown without reservations. I love you, Sophia, Not the pretense we started with, not the facade. Just you, as you are. She searched his eyes intently, delving into their depths where she could see the unfiltered truth reflecting back at her, a sincerity that melted away, her doubts like morning mist under the sun. "I love you too," she replied softly, her voice filled with a quiet conviction. "Despite the mess we've made, or perhaps because of it, it's shown us who we really are." From that moment, they began to rebuild their relationship slowly and deliberately, with honesty serving as their sturdy new foundation, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. Months later, under the bright lights of a prestigious gallery show in Austin that proudly showcased her innovative work, Alexander stood steadfastly by her side, his presence a quiet anchor amid the buzz of admiration. He watched with genuine pride as critics wandered through the exhibits, praising her unique talent and vision in hushed, appreciative tones. "She's always been brilliant," he told a curious reporter who approached them, his smile warm and authentic. "I just got lucky enough to see it first, to witness that spark before the world caught on." A full year onward, they strolled hand in hand along the winding paths of the ranch, the familiar earth crunching softly under their feet, her thriving design firm bringing her fulfillment, and his life now balanced with a profound sense of joy that had long eluded him. As the night sky unfolded above them in a canopy of twinkling stars, he leaned in gently and kissed her forehead, a simple gesture brimming with pure tenderness and affection. This was no longer an act, no scripted performance for appearances. This was their genuine reality, painstakingly forged in the mud of mistakes and the unyielding truth of their hearts, imperfect in its humanity, yet enduring through every trial and triumph.